Over the past year, I've been replaying a handful of the Mario RPGs. I've been playing these games off and on ever since I was a kid, but never finished most of them for one reason or another. Mostly because I was bad at them. Playing them again now and finally seeing them through to the end has given me a newfound appreciation for the entire sub-series. From the original Super Mario RPG, to the turn-based Paper Mario games, and the Mario and Luigi series, each game has claimed a soft spot in my heart for a variety of different reasons, and I loved coming back to every single one of them. Except for that one. You know what you did. What I think makes these games so special to me is just how engaging they are while still being simple and approachable. Every game is built off a similar framework. They're all turn-based RPGs with action-oriented mechanics, a plethora of unique boss and enemy encounters, and they all have vast locales for you to explore to find hidden items and upgrades. Despite being so similar at their core, each series takes a different approach to that base idea and has been able to carve out their own identities in the process. I often see these games touted as baby's first RPG, and while I do agree that they're really good as entries into the turn-based genre, I also think that label kind of downplays the genius game design across this whole subseries. These games are simple by design, but they still feature refined mechanics that offer countless opportunities for meaningful decision making, and because of that they've managed to be incredibly engaging, even as an adult who's played these games a lot over the years. These games are designed in such a way that they can be enjoyed by just about everyone, regardless of age or skill level, and I think that's really impressive. They all have this infectious charm that makes them really easy to fall in love with. Except for you. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars is the first Mario RPG to be released, and in a lot of ways it sets the groundwork for the entire sub-series. The game was developed by Square, and from the very beginning they want you to know that this won't be your average Mario adventure. The game opens with Peach getting kidnapped. Must be a Thursday. And after storming Bowser's castle and knocking him to his death, Mario once again saves the princess from harm. Until BAM! Giant space sword. The impact of the sword falling from the sky sends everyone in the castle hurling across the Mushroom Kingdom. So Mario sets out on a journey to once again find the princess, and in the process gets entangled with something greater. What immediately sticks out about this game to me is just how unique it is visually. It goes for that pre-rendered aesthetic similar to Donkey Kong Country, and it helps the game stand out from previous Mario titles up to that point. The character and enemy designs in this game are something else. You've got your standard stuff like toads and Goombas, but interspersed between them are wackier creatures like dinosaurs, giant lizards, jesters, punished Donkey Kong? The visual variety in this game is insane, and it gives the world this visual flair that's both unique but still familiar. Exploring the Mushroom Kingdom has never felt so in-depth. There's so many different areas to explore, from the mushroom plains, the sewers, Booster's Tower, you crash a wedding at some point. There's always something new and exciting happening to keep you on your toes. Scattered across the land are various item boxes filled with items and equipment for Mario and his party. Some blocks are invisible, which can be a little annoying at times, but it's also kind of fun stumbling upon these things when you least expect it. Along his adventure, Mario will meet a bunch of different characters that will join his party. You've got this cloud guy named Mallow, who thinks he's a tadpole for some reason. Hey, I'm not judging, it's 2024, you can be whatever you want, buddy. There's this star servant named Gino that joins the party to look for the star pieces. Yeah, apparently when the sword fell from the sky, he broke the Star Road, which is where wishes in this world are granted, into 7 different pieces. So Gino asks Mario to help him repair it by gathering all 7 stars. Hey, wait a minute. You even get to play as Bowser and Peach in this game. I've always liked it whenever Peach gets to step out of the damsel role and be more of an active presence in the games. Bowser is the highlight though. He's trying to put up a tough guy act for most of the game, even though he's pissed about losing his castle at the beginning of the game. He only rationalizes joining your party by pretending that you joined his Koopa army, which I think is really cute. I really like what they do with Mario in this game. Despite being a silent protagonist, he's surprisingly emotive, reacting to most situations in a really goofy way. I've always loved how they get around him talking to people by having him shapeshift in order to mime out events. It's never not funny to me. In terms of gameplay, battles are structured like your average turn-based RPG. Actions are tied to a specific button, which they shamelessly stole from Persona 5 over 21 years earlier. You've got your basic attack command, special attacks, items, and a defense button. Characters can use multiple different weapons, which is pretty neat. It's pretty standard for the most part, but there's one key difference that separates it from other games in the genre. This game adds a feature known as timed hits. Basically, by hitting the A button during an attack, you can deal more damage. This can also be used to guard against enemy attacks during their turn. This seamlessly small feature adds a surprising amount of tactility to the battle system, as it introduces a small skill component that can be really powerful if you get good at it. Some super attacks can be extended with timed hits, like the super jump for example, so if you get good at them you can demolish most enemies. Overall, the battle system in this game, while simple, is still solid. Each character has an archetype they can fill, and you can spec into certain stats with each level up, so there's a little customization there. Although oddly enough, certain levels in this game give bonus stats if you spec into a specific stat. For example, speccing into the power stat for Mario at level 3 gives more points than it would if you did it at like level 5, so if you want the best character stats possible, you'll need to follow a guide. But the game is pretty easy even without that. It's just a weird thing I found while researching this game. My only real issue with the battle system is that the inputs for some of the timed hits are a little unclear. For the most part, you just hit the button whenever the attack connects, but for magic spells like Mallow's Thunderbolt for example, it can be kinda hard to tell when you're supposed to push the button for the most damage. It's not game breaking or anything, but it can be a little frustrating at times personally speaking. Super Mario RPG in a lot of ways is a product of its time, and I don't mean that in a bad way. The game oozes this 90s charm that's really infectious. The game is remarkably simple, but it still offers enough depth in the battle and character building aspects to stay engaging, and the enemy and environmental variety helps the game feel very unique. The game has aged in some areas. The hidden blocks and invisible paths off screen reek of that old strategy guide design mentality. But it still remains a remarkably strong outing, especially for Mario's first venture into the RPG genre. But for my money, the series really starts to find its footing and cement itself as an RPG staple when the series makes its jump to the third dimension. Kinda. The Paper Mario series has had its fair share of ups and downs over the years. While some of the recent games have been seen in a less than favorable light, I think the first two turn-based games are some of the best games on their respective systems. These games are very reminiscent of Super Mario RPG, but they take strides to innovate on just about every aspect of the formula. There's a much greater emphasis on exploration and plot this time around. Not that these things weren't in Super Mario RPG, but they're a lot more pronounced in these games. Each game is split into chapters, with a loose overarching plot tying them together. In the original Paper Mario, Bowser takes over Peach's castle by stealing the Star Rod, a magical wand that practically makes him invincible, so Mario has to gather the Star Spirits in order to combat its power and save Peach. The Thousand-Year Door has a similar structure. Peach finds a treasure map tied to the legend of the Thousand-Year Door sleeping under Rogueport, and sends it to Mario inviting him on a treasure hunt before disappearing. So Mario is tasked with both gathering the crystal stars to open the Thousand-Year Door, while simultaneously looking for Peach in the process. While the overall narratives aren't anything to write home about, the games make up for that with the individual chapter stories. Each one has its own mini-arc, and they explore a variety of different scenarios, from something as simple as restoring rain to a flower field, or exploring Yoshi's Island for treasure, to more wacky plots like Mario becoming a wrestler in order to become the champion, while uncovering a sinister conspiracy behind the scenes. Each chapter is, for the most part, pretty self-contained, but there's a few characters here and there that show up multiple times throughout the game. The characters in these games in general are quite strong. Mario is still a silent protagonist, but he's given some personality through his dialogue options. You can make him really mean in some instances, and it's never not funny to me. I think my favorite running gag in these games has to be how many times people get Mario's name wrong. It feels like every chapter Mario gets a new nickname, some of which that makes sense in context, but others that are just close enough that it's not worth correcting them. It's so silly, I love it. Personally, I prefer how these games handle their stories and characters compared to Super Mario RPG. I think they do a really good job of breathing life into these worlds and making them feel more lived in. Along his adventures, Mario will run into a bunch of different partner characters that are usually tied to that area's story, but will then tag along with him for the rest of his adventure. I really like these guys. They all have their own unique character traits and personalities. They aren't super deep characters or anything. Most of the time they're just there to chime in on whatever you're doing and act as Mario's mouthpiece. but their dialogue is often quite funny and charming, and they never overstay their welcome. They all have their own abilities that they can use to help Mario along his adventure. A lot of partner abilities are shared between games, like the ability to get some trivia about whatever location you're in, or hit switches from a certain distance away, but some are unique to the particular games, and a lot of them contribute to this game's exploration aspect. Each area in this game is filled to the brim with hidden goodies, whether that's an item tucked in a bush, a badge, star pieces. There's a lot of reasons to explore these areas to their fullest. A lot of places have secrets that are locked behind certain partners or abilities, so you're incentivized to come back to different areas over time and explore them in a new way. Visually speaking, I've always liked the paper aesthetic these games go for. It results in a much more stylistic art direction, and because of that, these games age remarkably well. The original Paper Mario doesn't do a whole lot with its paper aesthetic outside of a few gags here and there, going for more of a diorama feel for its environments. And while the Thousand Year Door mostly follows in its footsteps, it's able to incorporate some paper gimmicks into its gameplay. You can stumble upon these evil chests that house spirits that'll curse you when you open them. They'll inconvenience you with curses such as turning you into a paper airplane, or being able to rotate on your Z-axis. Oh, the horror. These do actually open up a lot of unique exploration opportunities, and it's nice to see the games lean organically into the paper aspect without overplaying it. The battles in these games have seen a massive step up from their predecessor. The game does away with the multiple weapon types, and instead limits Mario to his jump and hammer. But now all action commands have a visual indicator. Most attacks now have their own unique prompts. Jumps are still your standard press the A button when you connect with the enemy, but hammers now have you pull back on the stick for a short time and let go when the light flashes on screen. Stronger attacks will have harder variations of these prompts. For example, the power bounce makes you do the input multiple times in a row to keep the chain going, with the input window getting smaller as time goes on. Or with the hammer, the time can be either faster or slower depending on the move you're using. On top of that, partners have their own unique skills that can be really beneficial in battle. Tattling on an enemy, for example, can reveal enemy weaknesses and lets you permanently see their health bar. Some skills let you hide from enemy attacks, some will buff Mario, and others can completely blow enemies off the field. While that's pretty much the extent of the system in the original Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door adds a couple new mechanics that add a lot of depth. For starters, now special moves have their own action command prompts, which wasn't a thing in the original game. And the game also introduces the Super Guard and Stylish commands. The Super Guard is a secondary defense option that basically acts as a parry. By pressing the B button when an attack lands, Mario will nullify the damage and deal a little bit back to the enemy. The only downside is that the window for the Super Guard is a lot smaller than the regular one, so you risk taking the full force of the hit should you mess it up. Meanwhile, Stylish commands are little tricks that can be performed in the middle of most normal action commands. Landing a Stylish command will net you some bonus star power, which is then used to perform special moves, so if you get really good at them you can charge them up super quickly and use them more often. What I like about these two additions in particular is that they add a small but effective risk versus reward aspect to the battles. Going for either a Super Guard or a Stylish move has an associated risk involved, so it feels all the more satisfying when you master them and can pull them off consistently. The battle system is pretty effective on its own, but it's further elevated by the badge and stat building system. When you level up in this game, instead of the standard incremental stat increases, you're given the option of increasing one of three stats: health points, flower points, or badge points. Health points are pretty self-explanatory, flower points are used for special moves, and badge points let you equip various badges you can find at shops or exploring the overworld. These badges have a variety of special effects, from base stat increases to your strength or defense, special jump or hammer attacks that have their own unique properties, or even simple things like changing the sound Mario's attacks make. To equip these badges you need a certain amount of badge points, and the amount you need for each badge changes depending on their strength or usefulness. What makes this system so interesting is how it interacts with the level system. Now whenever you level up, there's a meaningful decision to be made on what stat you decide to increase. Do you go for more HP so you can take more hits from the stronger enemies? Or do you increase your flower points so that you can use more special attacks? But to even use those special attacks, you need to have the badge points to equip them. Every time you decide to raise a given stat, there's an inherent trade-off, which makes you think more carefully about what stat you want to upgrade and when. This system lends itself to a lot of different build combinations, and the game is designed in such a way that the game is beatable no matter what build you decide to go for. Some might just be a little harder than others. For example, you could go for a build that makes Mario into a glass cannon, by using a badge setup that decreases the damage taken and increases the damage dealt at low HP thresholds. Or you could turn Mario into a tank with tons of HP at the cost of not being able to use a bunch of badges. The system adds a lot of freedom into how you want to build your Mario, and it even adds a little bit of replayability should you want to experiment with a new build. On the surface, the first two Paper Mario games are simple, beginner-friendly RPGs, but in actuality they have a lot going on under the hood. Their battle systems offer countless opportunities for meaningful decision-making, both in the heat of battle and when you're building your character, while still being simple enough to be understood at a glance. The badge and level up system leave a lot of room for player customization, and while there are some badges that I think should be a part of Mario's base moveset, for example the quick change badge that allows you to change party members without wasting a turn, overall the system is incredibly solid, and I often find myself experimenting with different badge combinations whenever I come back to these games. Top that with emotional stories and lovable characters, it's not hard to see why these games are as beloved as they are. The Paper Mario games are no doubt classics, but to me, the best Mario RPG the sub-series has to offer has to be the Mario and Luigi series. The Mario and Luigi games are the perfect combinations of everything that came before it. These are the first of the Mario RPGs that I had played, and they've remained the most consistent in terms of quality over the years. I think what I've always appreciated about these games is just how much they lean into the wackier side of the Mario series. Like Superstar Saga opens with Peach's voice getting stolen, and her words being replaced with actual explosives. So this must be what happens to my mom every time I forget to take out the trash. As the games go on, they get wackier and more creative with their plots and scenarios. One minute you're traveling through time with your baby counterparts to stop an alien invasion, the next you're traveling through the inside of Bowser's body, and then you're exploring a dream world where Luigi is basically a god. As he should be. The types of stuff you do in these games are so unique compared to most Mario games, and it makes them really fun to play since you never know what's going to happen next. Maybe you'll be fighting a giant bird creature, or an alien mushroom, or a dark version of Bowser. It feels like anything can happen in these games, and it would somehow make complete sense in context. I also really like just how diverse the casts in these games are. A lot of them take place outside the Mushroom Kingdom, so you get to meet the different inhabitants of these lands. A lot of them have their own unique cultures and customs. It feels like they exist outside the influence of the greater Mario universe. I think one of my favorite gags in this series has to be at the beginning of Superstar Saga, where you try to exchange your Mushroom Kingdom coins for Bean Kingdom coins, only to find out the exchange rate is abysmal, so your 100 coins are reduced to only a measly 10. It's such a small detail that's never even brought up again, but I think it's really cool that they even acknowledge these kingdoms have different economies, even if it's just for a one-off gag. Even the games that do take place in the Mushroom Kingdom tend to introduce their own types of new characters and enemies, whether that's these little block people, the Shroobs, or Starlo. They'll even bring back Mario characters that don't get used very often, like Professor Egad. I think having this character diversity does a lot to make these games feel more fleshed out, and they bring them back constantly across the series, so they never feel like one-off throwaway characters. You're not stuck seeing the same toads over and over again. The types of NPCs you see change depending on the area you're exploring, and it makes the greater world of Mario feel way bigger as the series progresses, and I really appreciate it for that. I've always loved the idea of exploring the world with both Mario and Luigi. They don't talk in a traditional sense, although they will speak to other characters in the sort of gibberish speak. They both still manage to have clear personalities. Mario is the brave, courageous type, always ready to jump into action when he's needed, and Luigi is a pussy. But despite having such simple personalities, they're sold through just how expressive the bros can be. This is in no small part due to the incredible sprite work across the whole series. Stuff that's influenced my childhood before even playing these games through the work of flash animations and whatnot. The two are able to seamlessly bounce off each other and the characters around them, and it makes them immensely charming even as they don't say any real words. I also think this makes exploring in a gameplay sense more interesting. Because you're controlling both Mario and Luigi, you have to accommodate both of them while platforming and stuff. Plus, having both brothers present opens up a lot of unique opportunities for exploration. I think it helps that these bros abilities, as they're called in-game, are really goofy. Like there's one you can use to cross gaps where the bros jump on each other's shoulders and act like a helicopter. There's this one move where Luigi squishes Mario with his hammer to make him smaller and fit through low gaps. There's one where Mario slams Luigi into the ground to get buried items. Functionally, they're all really simple, but the way they're animated adds a lot of personality to the overworld movement. It makes walking from area to area looking for items and stuff a lot more fun, and places a nice emphasis on the bros relationship. This focus on teamwork even manages to extend to the battles. The Mario and Luigi games easily have my favorite battle system out of any of the 3 subseries. While all 3 have their fair share of action mechanics, this one has the most in-depth ones by far. Like in Paper Mario, you can attack with either your hammer or jump, a special move, or use an item. Special moves are now classified as bros attacks, and they use both Mario and Luigi to deal massive damage to the enemy. Like the bros actions in the overworld, these lean heavily into slapstick comedy. You've got more basic stuff like the fire flower and shell, but then there's crazier moves like launching yourself out of a cannon, slamming Mario into an enemy with Luigi's hammer, or rolling up a bunch of Luigi clones and squashing a group of enemies. There's so many different types of bros attacks across the series, it's kind of insane, and they're all just as creative as the last. The biggest changes to the battles by far has to be the new defensive options. Now instead of a traditional guard, you can use your hammer or jump during an enemy attack. This can be used to either dodge or counter an enemy attack. Most enemies will have unique attack patterns, some even have ways to switch them up every once in a while, so the game is still able to keep you on your toes even as you learn each enemy's patterns. Bosses benefit from this the most, because a lot of times you'll need to do multiple commands in a row to counter their attacks. Because of this, a lot of fights feel sort of like a puzzle, and it feels really good to figure them out and demolish enemies in your path. I think this system is really cool, because it not only adds an extra layer to the battles and boss fights, but also an extra thing to consider when building your character. Like in Mario RPG, you get set stat increases per level up, but you can choose one stat to raise a tiny bit further through this roulette wheel. While this is a pretty traditional setup, I think the action command system adds a little bit more thought into what stat you choose to raise. For example, if you're really good at the action commands, you could dump a bunch of stats into power or luck since you won't be taking as much damage. Or if you're not as good at the action commands, you could dump stats into defense or HP in order to tank attacks whenever you mess up a dodge or counter. Coupled with the armor and weapons that have unique abilities, there's a lot of customization you can do with the bros depending on your skill level. While it's not necessarily as deep as Paper Mario's stat system, it still offers a lot of opportunities for meaningful decision making. What I like most about Mario and Luigi is just how fun the whole series is. Not just in a gameplay sense, but with its story, characters, and overall vibe. The series isn't afraid to lean into more cartoony elements, and I think that surrealism helps it stand out, even among its other Mario RPG counterparts. I think what makes the Mario RPGs so special is their simplistic charm. On the outside looking in, they're your average colorful, beginner-friendly turn-based RPGs, but take a closer look and you'll see that there's plenty of depth to be found in each and every one of these games on top of the more Mario aspects. It's the blend of wacky, cartoony aspects with the countless opportunities for meaningful gameplay decisions that make these games as appealing as they are. When you look at the few games that aren't as favorably looked upon, like the later games in the Paper Mario series, a big reason they're seen that way in my eyes is that they lean too hard into the simplicity aspect of the series. Sticker Star has its own wealth of other problems that we don't really have time to get into, but it's still an issue present at the core of every game after that. They try to keep the pseudo-RPG elements without the meaningful mechanics that make those systems engaging. In all of these games, there's no reward for battling, so there's no real reason to engage with battles outside of the act of battling. And in the case of both Sticker Star and Color Splash, you're actively wasting resources should you choose to battle. Origami King tries to rectify this by having a more unique battle system, but with no rewards other than coins, which are easy to find all over the game anyway, battles begin to feel superfluous after a while, and in the process it bogs down the other great aspects of the game. These games still have that witty writing the series is known for, but they got rid of the unique characters and replaced them with countless generic toads, which just feels lame. With the older Mario RPGs, there's a constant feedback loop with the battles, character building, and exploration, and they all feed into each other in a really interesting way. But when the only meaningful decision you make in these new games is whether or not to engage in the gameplay in the first place, I think that's pretty telling of a lackluster design. Thankfully, I think we're out of the woods in terms of this issue. With the recent Thousand Year Door remake and the Mario and Luigi Brothership coming out later this year, I think Nintendo is aware of what needs to be done to breathe life back into these sub-series. I don't think the next Paper Mario game needs to be the Thousand Year Door 2 or whatever. I just like the gameplay loop to have that Paper Mario charm along with meaningful decision making again. The Mario RPGs will always hold a special place in my heart, and I'm really excited to see what Nintendo does with the series going forward.